Now let's talk about the types of interviews. Basically, there are a few types. Most of the interviews that happen one-on-one, which means one person to one person. Most of the interviews that happen, unless there are some interviews wherein they take mass, when they need people in mass, they take group interviews. These days, what's happening is there is no specific interview that happens as a group interview, but there are few rounds during a normal interview that can go through the process of going through a group interview, like in hotels, in airlines, in IT companies also, when they go into a college and they want to take a lot of people. So what they do is, first they would screen people based on a group discussion or a communication round. They would just check the fluency and let them through. So those might be group interviews. There are certain kind of interviews. These would be senior position interviews where there is a lot of cross departmental work. So there might be a panel of interviewers, one from different departments or different domains of the companies itself, different verticals of the companies. And the fourth kind of interview that's happening these days are telephonic and Skype, because a lot of things changes when you're doing a telephonic interview versus a one-on-one interview. One-on-one interview, you have to pay particular attention, and especially in terms of grooming, you have to pay attention to your behavior, body language, which is missing in telephonic, and Skype partially visible. So in telephonic, you have to be very particular about your communication skills. And so these are the basic four kinds of interviews. And one-on-one is the most predominant way of actually judging a candidate for a particular profile. Group interviews, uh, let's talk in relevance to the different rounds, so then it would be appropriate, because just talking about type of interviews, because they are not just specific types of interviews, they are also, they have used this particular type of interview in different rounds during an interview process. The first round would be a screening round. How this happens is, now sometimes this might not be in the same sequence that I've showed you. So what could happen is they would maybe club one or two together. Some might be appropriate, some might not be appropriate. It depends on the interview. But for a fresher, this is how they would do, especially if there's a mass recruitment, if they require people in group and there are a lot of footfalls. Let's say for an airlines, if they need about 10-15 people and there are 1000 people outside, so that's how they would go about the interview process. The first process would be screening. In screening, depending on the qualifying criteria of that job, if it is let's say a sales job, they would check maybe your screening criteria. Number one would be the way you communicate. Number two would be your knowledge, if you have knowledge and skills or experience. So basically they would even screen you through your CV. So when you submit a CV for an interview, trust me, your interview has already started, because they would screen from your CV. Sometimes they would just ask you not to come for an interview. They would reject you after you submit your resume, especially on online. When you send your resumes online to certain companies, you don't get a call. The reason might be they might not have screened you, they might not have approved you after screening for the first time. So that's the reason why the last video that you saw was uploaded in our channel, which was about why you need to make a winning CV. So screening would be the first round. Sometimes they might club and they might just make screening as a qualifying round, like in hotels and airlines, they definitely do that. They would ask you to come up and in a group, one by one, stand up and give your introduction or speak on a certain topic. And based on how you perform, based on how they judge you on that, they approve you to the next round. Okay, so sometimes they club, sometimes they may not. They would just screen you for your first round, and then they would ask you for a qualifying round. And post that, if it's a very technical kind of job, then they might ask you for a technical approval, as a technical qualifying round as well. If not, then they approve you and they would say that, okay, you have crossed the first round, now your next round would be with such and such people, or under a different setting, like a group, maybe a group discussion. So next round might be a group discussion, a GD, or it might be a skit. depending on what the profile demands. If it demands a lot of proactive communication in which you have to talk yourself and not depend, you're not going to be answering questions, you're going to be more like, may I help you, may I help you, you're going to be more proactive on the job, then they might give you skits and they might give you scenarios, they might give you plays that you have to play in about 5 minutes, prepare yourself and do. But if they want to check your decision making and your teamwork, then probably they will just throw in a group discussion and check you how you behave in a group out there. So we would cover group discussions in details later on. As of now, these two. So once that round is there, once your approval round is there, then there might be a panel interview with the HR and the which department you might want to join. So there might be a panel interview. There might not be. It might just be a one-on-one interview too. However, that's how it goes. So a panel interview when they select you, and then finally there would be a round wherein they would give you a job offer. The HR would also be there to explain certain aspects of the company, and or the company CEO might take the interview. So this is basically how it goes in the interview process.